Why, yes, The Legend of Zelda is better than The Elder Scrolls, Fromsoft. It is better than Fable. It is better than Starfield. It is better than Fallout. It is better than Balldo's game. Like, this is something that we really do need to talk about more in the sphere, because this happens every generation, where you have an entire demographic of young 17 to 35-year-old men who genuinely believe that Zelda is some childish video game that isn't on par with the real adult games made for adult gamers, right? These are the guys who buy Skyrim on day one, right? These are the guys who obsess over lore and Baldur's Gate 3. These are the guys going on comment section talking about how Zelda is overhyped and how it can't compete. You have all these guys coming out and ranting and raving about how great Skyrim is, and yet curiously none of them can ever finish a playthrough. Name a single one of these guys that has done everything in Skyrim or Dark Souls or Fable or anything. Nobody fucking cares about Fable, right? And yet it is very common for this demographic to play Fable, to be intimately familiar with it, to even look forward to new Fable games on Xbox, which are never going to happen, while downplaying the far superior Legend of Zelda games. This has been the trend I think we've noticed for a long time. Zelda is far more innovative. It has better dungeons. It has better writing. It has better adventure elements, right? It has a better sense of progression. People really underestimate, how good Zelda actually is. And whenever they try and, try and downplay it, they always focus on things this game has a bigger open world, and this game, it focuses more on the combat, and this one has a better story, and they don't really stop and think that Zelda does all of that in a way that's cohesive, that's intuitive, that's fun, and completely unique to the video game medium. It's not like Baldur's Gate 3 where it's just some video game-ish adaptation of Balldo of D&D, right? Zelda is its own unique brand with its own unique identity, with its own unique presentation and vibes, and just its unique culture. And nothing, has had the enduring legacy that Zelda has. So I want people to think about this whenever you have these boomers come out and try and say well, the Elder Scrolls did, we've only gotten 5 Elder Scrolls games in 30 years. Dark Souls is the same thing over and over again. Fable was never good. Okay? They always just kind of try and come up with some excuse, they come up with some justification, trying to justify their preconceived notions. As someone who's played all these games, I can tell you that Zelda's better than all of that, Growing up, I had to deal with people telling me Okame was better than Twilight Princess, right? Because of the visuals, because of the theming, because of you get to play as a wolf, bro. You had people screaming about how good Okami is, with no regard for the length, no regard for the pacing, no regard for the dungeon design, the general combat. The only reason people hyped up Okami was because of its unique setting and the character. When you break it down, really look at both of them extensively, you will find that Zelda is far more complex. Not just from a combat perspective, but when it comes to a level design perspective, when it comes to a storytelling perspective, when it comes to themes, ideas, level layouts, you just have so much more in Zelda, And Okame really, at its core, cannot compete. It was only hyped up when it was a PS2 exclusive. And the instant it was no longer that, when it got ported to Wii, suddenly nobody cared for it anymore. That is the reality that we see with these games constantly. Everybody tries to hype up, Darksiders or whatever, whoa, it's way more badass and dark than Zelda, and they go bankrupt within 2 entries. You can't name a video game franchise that gets as many entries as Zelda, that innovates as much as Zelda, that remains as high quality as Zelda, and is, maintained its relevancy as, the all-time GOAT. How many Zelda games are considered the all-time best now? You have, the original, you have A Link to the Past, you have Ocarina, Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild. It's all these games are downright masterpieces. And the fact that people seriously try and tell you that, like, well, Peter Molyneux could have made Fable as good as that if he was just given more money. Like, if he would just stop lying, that is a complete and total cope. Like, you do need to kneel. You need to acknowledge that you do need to kneel. You do need to acknowledge that Nintendo has destroyed the competition. You have to acknowledge that The Elder Scrolls 6 is never coming out, and when it does, it's going to be disappointing. Like, Elder Scrolls, okay, Skyrim came out in 2011, okay? What happened, like, that year? We got Skyward Sword, okay? What happened after that? We got A Link Between Worlds. And then, like, Triforce Heroes, and then Breath of the Wild, and then Tears of the Kingdom, Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity, Age of Imprisonment. Like, we've gotten so many Zelda games over the past 15 years, okay? While Skyrim fans have been dicking around trying to avoid gay marriages and, trying to, I don't know, avoid doing the main quest line. Skyrim fans don't play the games. Like, they don't know anything about the games. All they care about is wandering around an open field and then just killing whatever they come across. Like, that's it. Like, there's no thought put into the questing or, what you're actually hoping to accomplish or the storytelling, because if you did, you would realize just how basic and trite all of the Elder Scrolls actually is, and how it doesn't really amount much to anything, essentially. Like, the Elder Scrolls is, and always has been, complete trash that cannot compete with Zelda. And that was 15 years ago. When Skyrim 2 comes out, and it is going to come out, the next several years, it's going to be a repeat of Grand Theft Auto 6, where it's just going to be this, insane hype, insane hype behind it, but at the end of the day, what you're going to get is just the same thing that we've always been getting. It's going to be the exact same thing, only worse. And eventually, there's going to come a time where it is normal for the masses to acknowledge that, Zelda is and always has been better than those. We're kind of in this stage now where it's kind of like, it's kind of like One Piece in 2005, 2007, when it was, already going for a while, they were in Skypiea or whatever, the series has been going on long enough and established itself as, a goated anime franchise by that point, right? But at that stage, the masses didn't care about it, because the masses were too busy, watching absolute nonsense and just, wasting their time with stupid shit. But eventually, One Piece was discovered by the masses and eventually blew up and eventually became, the biggest comic in the world, surpassing Batman and the like. But, One Piece is huge now. Zelda is kind of in the same position where, the industry has fought to preserve this narrative that Zelda and Nintendo in general is constantly in this state of failure, that it's constantly underwhelming fans and constantly undelivering. But, the reality of that is that it's not really true. And it is high time that we acknowledge that.